Dr. Elena Martinez looked out the window of the research ship UES Horizon at the dark space station floating in front of them. Kepler Station had been silent for 6 months. No messages, no signals, nothing at all. The metal walls looked cold and empty against the black space around it. That Captain Jake Morrison walked up behind her. "Are you sure you want to go in there alone?" he asked. His voice sounded worried. "We don't know what happened to the people inside." Elena nodded. She was excited about what they might find. The report said they were studying alien creatures from the outer worlds. "Think about what we could learn from their research." The captain shook his head. "I don't like it. Something bad happened on that station. Why else would everyone just disappear?" Elena picked up her equipment bag. Inside were her tools for studying alien life forms. She had spent years learning about creatures from other worlds. This was the chance she had been waiting for. "I'll be careful," she said. "Just get me inside, and I'll look around. If I find anything dangerous, I'll come right back." The captain's team worked for 2 hours to connect their ship to the station. The airlocks were still working, but everything else seemed dead. No lights, no sounds, no signs of life anywhere. Elena put on her spacesuit and checked her equipment. One more time. She had a flashlight, a scanner for detecting life forms, and basic tools for collecting samples. She also carried a small weapon, just in case. "Stay in contact," Captain Morrison told her over the radio. "If we don't hear from you every 30 minutes, we're coming in after you." Elena stepped through the airlock into Kepler Station. The first thing she noticed was how cold it felt. Her breath made small clouds in the air. Emergency lights flickered on and off in the hallway, making strange shadows on the walls. She walked slowly down the main corridor. Her footsteps echoed. In the empty space, the walls were covered with signs pointing to different areas. Medical bay, living quarters, research labs, and biocontainment. She decided to head toward the research labs first. The doors to most rooms were locked, but Elena's scanner showed that some areas still had power. She found a computer terminal that was still working and plugged in her datapad. The screen showed a map of the station. "This place is huge," she said into her radio. "Much bigger than we thought. There are 5 levels of research labs underground." "Captain." Morrison's voice came back fuzzy with static. "Be careful down there. Something is interfering with our signals." Elena found the elevator and pressed the button to go down to the first research level. The elevator moved slowly, making grinding noises. When the doors opened, she stepped into a long hallway lined with laboratory doors. She tried the first door. It was unlocked. Inside, she found tables covered with scientific equipment and computers. Everything looked normal, except for dark. Stains on the floor that looked like dried blood. The next room was different. Large glass containers lined the walls, each one big enough to hold a person. Most were empty, but some still had strange liquid inside them. Elena's scanner started, beeping rapidly. "Unknown biological material detected," the scanner's voice said. Elena moved closer to one of the containers. Something dark floated inside the liquid. It looked like pieces of an animal, but not like any animal she had ever seen. The pieces had too many arms and sharp teeth. She took pictures with her camera and collected a small sample of the liquid. As she worked, she heard a sound from somewhere deeper in the station. It sounded like scratching, like claws on metal dock. Elena froze and listened carefully. The sound came again, louder this time. Something was moving in the station, and it wasn't human. She tried to call Captain Morrison on her radio. "Jake, are you there? I'm hearing strange sounds down here." Only static came back. Elena checked her radio. The signal was completely blocked. She was alone in the station with whatever was making those sounds. She decided to head back to the elevator, But when she pressed the button, nothing happened. The elevator was dead. She tried the emergency stairs, but the door was locked and her access card wouldn't work. That's when the lights went out completely. Kalena turned on her flashlight and looked around. In the darkness, she could hear more sounds. Clicking noises. Like insects, but much louder. Something was moving in the air vents above her head. She realized what had happened. The station's computer system had activated some kind of emergency lockdown. She was trapped in the research levels with whatever creatures had been kept in those containers. Elena took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. She was a scientist. She could figure this out. She just needed to find another way out and avoid whatever was hunting in the darkness around her. But as she moved through the dark hallway, Elena began to smile. She wasn't afraid of the creatures hiding in the shadows. She had been preparing for this moment her whole life. The things lurking in this station had no idea what kind of human they were dealing with. The hunt was about to begin, but Elena wasn't going to be the prey. Elena moved carefully through the dark hallway, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. The sounds were getting closer now. She could hear things moving in the walls, in the ceiling, everywhere around her. She found a room marked storage and slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. The room was full of scientific equipment and supplies. Elena looked through the shelves until she found what she needed. Chemical containers, metal tools, and some basic weapons. Something scraped against the door from outside. Elena turned off her flashlight and waited in the darkness. Through the door's small window, she could see a shadow moving past. It was long and thin, with too many arms. The creature stopped outside her door. Elena could hear it breathing, a wet sound like water dripping. And it moved on, looking for easier prey. Elena waited until the sounds faded away, then turned her light back on. She had work to do. She opened her equipment bag and pulled out her tools. If she was going to survive, she needed to learn about these creatures fast. The first one found her 20 minutes later. Elena was examining some research notes when she heard the air vent above her head creak. She looked up just as a black shape dropped from the ceiling. The creature was like a giant spider, but its body was wrong. Too soft, too flexible, like it was made of liquid darkness. The thing reached for her with arms that stretched like rubber. Elena didn't run. Instead, she grabbed a plasma cutter from the supply shelf and turned it on. The blue flame cut through the creature's arm, and it screamed with a sound like breaking glass. Elena studied the creature as it writhed on the floor. Its blood was black and thick. Its body could change shape, but it had limits. The plasma cutter had hurt it because the heat stopped its shape-changing ability. Interesting, Elena said, taking notes while the creature died. You can compress your body to fit through small spaces, but extreme heat makes you solid again. She collected samples of the creature's blood and tissue, storing them in small containers. The creature's screams had been loud. Other things would come to investigate soon. Elena was right. 10 minutes later, she heard scratching sounds from multiple directions. Things were moving through the walls, coming toward her location. She counted at least 6 different creatures based on the sounds they made. She turned off her light and waited by the door. When the first creature came through, Elena was ready. This one was different from the shadow creature. It moved on 4 legs, with sharp claws that could cut through metal. Its body was covered in spines that could shoot out like arrows. Elena had found a riot shield in the storage room. She used it to block the spine attacks while she got close enough to use her plasma cutter. The creature was fast, but Elena was faster. She had spent years studying how predators moved, how they thought, how they attacked. She cut the creature's legs off one by one, keeping it alive so she could study its reactions. The creature tried to shoot more spawns, but Elena had already figured out the pattern. She knew where it would aim before it did. "You're pack hunters," she said to the dying creature. "You use fear and confusion to overwhelm your prey. But I'm not afraid of you." The other creatures could smell the blood. They came at her all at once, thinking she was trapped. But Elena had prepared for this. She had moved the furniture too. Create a funnel, forcing the creatures to come at her one at a time. She killed them systematically, using different methods on each one to learn their weaknesses. The shadow creatures couldn't handle bright light. The spine creatures were blind on their left side. The ones that looked like giant insects could be paralyzed by hitting a nerve cluster behind their heads. When the last creature was dead, Elena looked around the room. Bodies were scattered everywhere, and the walls were covered with black blood. She felt excited, not afraid. This was better than any research she had ever done. Elena spent the next hour dissecting the creatures and taking detailed notes. Their biology was fascinating. They had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. Their bodies were perfect hunting machines, but they had never faced anything like a human before. She found something else interesting in her examination. These creatures were not just random monsters. They were intelligent. They had been trying to communicate with each other during the fight, warning each other about her tactics. Elena smiled. Intelligent prey was always more challenging. She gathered her samples and equipment and moved to a new location. The creatures would come back, and they would be more careful this time. They would bring more friends, try different approaches, maybe even set traps of their own. Elena looked forward to it. She had always been good at games, especially the kind where the stakes were life and death. These creatures thought they were the predators in this place, but they were wrong. Elena Martinez had been born to hunt. She had just been waiting for prey that was worth her time got as she walked through the dark corridors of the station. Elena could hear more creatures moving in the distance. They were being more careful now, staying hidden, watching her. They were starting to realize that the human they had trapped was not like other humans. Elena found a good spot to set up her next hunting ground and began preparing her traps. The creatures would come for her again soon, as she wanted to be ready. She had learned so much from the first group. The next ones would teach her even more. The station was full of predators, but Elena was about to show them what a real predator looked like. Elena had been in the station for 3 days now. She had learned to move like the creatures, staying in the shadows and making no sound. Her clothes were covered with the black blood of the things she had killed, but she didn't mind. The smell helped hide her from the others. She had set up her base in the medical bay. The room had good lighting, clean tables for her work, and only one entrance that she could defend easily. The walls were now covered with her research notes and drawings of creature. Anatomy. Elena had killed 17 creatures so far. Each one taught her something new about how they lived, how they hunted, how they thought. She kept the useful parts and threw away the rest. The medical bay smelled like death, but Elena barely noticed anymore. The creatures had stopped attacking her directly. They had learned that she was dangerous, that she could kill them faster than they could kill her. Now they watched her from a distance, trying to understand what she was. Elena found this interesting. Most animals would either keep attacking until they won or run away completely. These creatures were doing something different. They were studying her, just like she was studying them. She decided to test their intelligence. Elena took some of the black blood she had collected and used it to paint symbols on the walls outside her base. The symbols were from the creatures' own communication system, which she had figured out by watching them interact. The message was simple: come and play. Within an hour, she heard sounds outside. The creatures were talking to each other in their clicking, scratching language. Elena listened carefully and took notes. They were debating whether to accept her challenge or not. Finally, one of them answered. It painted its own symbol on the wall in response. The symbol meant, "We see you." Elena smiled. Now things were getting interesting. She left her base and walked to the main research lab. The creatures followed her, staying hidden, but never too far away. Elena could feel their eyes watching her every move. In the lab, Elena found what she was looking for. The research computers were still working, and they contained files about the creatures. The human scientists had been studying them for months. Before everything went wrong, Elena read through the files quickly. The creatures were not from this part of space at all. They had come from a crashed colony ship that had been drifting for decades. The original colonists had been changed by radiation and the hostile environment of their ship. Over time, they had evolved into these hunting creatures, but they still remembered being human. Elena found video recordings of the research team's experiments. The scientists had been trying to communicate with the creatures, to find some trace of their human memories. They had succeeded too well. The creatures had remembered not just that they were once human, but how humans thought, how humans could be cruel, how humans were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. So, they had broken free and killed their captors. Elena understood now why the creatures were acting differently around her. They recognized something in her that reminded them of what they used to be. They saw a human who could think like they did, who could hunt like they did. They were afraid of her because she was what they had been trying to become. Elena heard movement behind her and turned around. 3 creatures stood in the doorway of the lab. These were different from the ones she had fought before. They were bigger, smarter, and they weren't trying to hide. The largest one stepped forward. Its body was a mix of human and monster features. It had arms and legs like a person, but its skin was black and covered with spines. Its face was almost human, but the eyes were solid black, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. "We know you," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "You are like us." Elena looked at the creature calmly. "No," she said, "you are like me. But you're not as good at it." The creature tilted its head, studying her. "You kill our brothers. You take pieces of them. You are not normal human." Elena nodded. "That's right. I'm not normal. I'm what humans become when they stop pretending to be civilized." The creature made a sound that might have been laughter. "You think you are predator. You think you hunt us. But this is our home now. We know every shadow, every sound. You cannot win." "I don't need to win," Elena said. "I just need to learn." She pulled out a small device she had built from parts in the medical bay. It looked like a simple scanner, but Elena had modified it. With chemicals from the creature's own bodies, the device released a cloud of gas into the air. The creatures immediately started choking and stumbling. Elena had created a poison that worked specifically on their modified biology. As the creatures fell to the floor, Elena knelt down next to the largest one. "Thank you for teaching me about your respiratory system," she said. "I couldn't have made this without studying your friends first." The creature looked at her with dying eyes. "What are you?" It whispered. Elena thought about the question. She had been asking herself the same thing for years. "I'm what evolution looks like when it doesn't have time to be gentle," she said. The creature died, and Elena got back to work. She had learned something important from this encounter. The creatures weren't just random monsters. They were organized, intelligent, and they had been planning something. Elena found their plans hidden in the computer files. The creatures hadn't just been living in the station. They had been preparing it for something. They were expecting more of their kind to arrive, refugees from other crashed ships. The station was supposed to become a breeding ground, a place where they could multiply and spread throughout human space. Elena looked at the dead creatures on the floor and smiled. She had just solved a problem that the human government didn't even know existed yet. But more importantly, she had found the perfect research opportunity. If more creatures were coming to the station, she would be here waiting for them. Elena had work to do. She needed to prepare the station for her new guests. She wanted to make sure they felt welcome, right up until the moment she started dissecting them. The hunt was just beginning. Elena had been in the station for 2 weeks now. She had turned the place into her personal laboratory and hunting ground. Every room had been modified to serve her purposes. The medical bay was her workshop, the cafeteria was her trophy room, and the lower levels had become her testing areas. The walls were covered with creature parts preserved in jars. She had collected samples from 23 different types of monsters. Each one had taught her something new about alien biology and hunting techniques. Elena had also improved her own abilities. She had learned to move through the stations, air vents like the shadow creatures. She could mimic their calls to confuse them. She had even figured out how to use their own chemical signals to track them through the dark corridors. The remaining creatures had stopped trying to attack her. Instead, they had retreated to the deepest parts of the station, where they thought they would be safe. They were wrong. Helena had found the station's main computer core and repaired it. The artificial intelligence was damaged, but still functional. She had spent hours talking to it, learning about the station's original purpose and the experiments that had been conducted here. The research team wasn't just studying the creatures. The AI told her in its broken electronic voice. They were trying to create new ones, hybrid forms that combined the best hunting traits from different species. Elena looked up from the tissue samples she was examining. Where are these hybrids now? Stored in the deep laboratories. Level 7, Section C. The embryos are in suspended animation, waiting for the right conditions to mature. Elena felt excited. New creatures to study, new challenges to overcome. She had been getting bored with the current monsters. They had become too predictable, too easy to hunt. How long until they're ready to hatch? She asked. Under normal conditions, 6 months. But the growth can be accelerated using the bioenhancement chambers. The researchers were planning to do this before the outbreak occurred. Elena smiled. Show me how to operate the chambers. The AI hesitated. That would be extremely dangerous. The hybrid creatures were designed to be perfect predators. They have the intelligence of the evolved colonists, the shape-changing ability of the shadow creatures, the speed of the spine runners, and the camouflage skills of the mimics. Perfect, Elena said. I've been looking for a real challenge. She made her way to level 7, moving through corridors that no human had walked in months. The creatures down here were different from the ones on the upper levels. They were older, more evolved, and they had been feeding on each other to survive. Elena found the deep laboratory easily. The doors were sealed with multiple locks, but she had learned to bypass the station's security systems. Inside, she found a room full of glass tubes containing developing creatures. The embryos were beautiful in their own terrifying way. They looked like a mixture of human and monster, with features that shifted and changed even as she watched. Some had multiple arms, others had no arms at all. Some had human faces with monster eyes. Others had monster faces with human expressions. Elena studied the control panels for the bioenhancement chambers. The process was complex, but she understood the basic principles. The chambers would accelerate growth and development, but they would also make the creatures more aggressive and unstable. She started the process on 3 different embryos. She wanted to see how they would develop, how they would behave, what new abilities they might have. While the chambers worked, Helena explored the rest of level 7. She found the research team's private notes, hidden files that explained what they had really been doing. The creatures weren't just evolved colonists. They were the result of deliberate experimentation. The original research team had been working. with genetic material from dozens of different alien species, trying to create the perfect biological weapon. The project had been funded by the military. They wanted creatures that could be used to clear hostile planets, to eliminate enemy colonies, to serve as living weapons that could think and adapt. But the creatures had been too successful. They had become too intelligent, too independent. They had turned on their creators and taken over the station. Elena found this information fascinating. The creatures weren't just monsters. They were weapons that had become self-aware. They understood their purpose and had rejected it, choosing to become something else instead. She heard sounds from the bio-enhancement chambers. The first hybrid was ready. Elena returned to the laboratory and looked at her creation. The creature was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It had the general shape of a human, but its skin could change color and texture like a chameleon. Its arms could stretch and reshape themselves. Its eyes could see in complete darkness. Elena opened the chamber and stepped back. The creature climbed out slowly, testing its new body. It looked around the room, then focused on Elena. "Hello," it said in a voice that sounded almost human. "Are you my creator?" Elena studied the creature carefully. It was more intelligent than she had expected. "No," she said. "I'm your teacher." The creature tilted its head, confused. "What will you teach me?" Elena smiled and picked up her plasma cutter. "I'm going to teach you how to die." The fight that followed was the most challenging Elena had ever experienced. The creature was fast, intelligent, and adaptable. It could change its shape to avoid her attacks, turn invisible to hide from her, and predict her movements based on her body language. But Elena had advantages too. She had studied dozens of similar creatures. She knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their limitations. More importantly, she understood something the creature didn't. Sometimes the best way to win a fight was to let your opponent think they were winning. Elena allowed the creature to corner her, to think it had found the perfect opportunity to attack. Then she activated a trap she had prepared earlier. The floor beneath the creature opened up, dropping it into a pit filled with acid dot. The creature screamed as it dissolved, but Elena was already taking notes. She had learned valuable information about the hybrid's abilities and weaknesses. The next one would be even more interesting. Over the next few days, Elena awakened and fought 6 more hybrid creatures. Each one was different. Each one taught her something new. She kept detailed records of their abilities, their behavior patterns, their methods of attack and defense. The station's AI watched her work with growing concern. "You're not studying them," it told her. "You're perfecting them." Elena looked up from her notes. "What do you mean?" "Each creature you fight becomes more challenging than the last. You're learning how to create the perfect predator, but you're also learning how to become one yourself." Elena considered this. The AI was right. With each fight, she was becoming more like the creatures. She was thinking like them, moving like them, hunting like them. "Is that a problem?" she asked. The AI's voice was quiet when it answered. "I'm not sure you're human anymore." Elena smiled. "I'm not sure I ever was." 3 weeks had passed since Elena had been trapped in the station. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew finally managed to break through the lockdown systems and enter Kepler Station. What they found inside made them wish they had never come. The corridors were decorated with the remains of alien creatures, arranged in patterns that looked like some kind of twisted art display. The walls were covered with detailed drawings and notes written in Elena's careful handwriting. But the content of those notes was horrifying. Subject 23 showed remarkable adaptation to thermal attacks. One note read, "Recommend extending pain duration to observe full defensive capabilities." Hybrid 7 demonstrated maternal instincts when protecting offspring. Useful weakness for future exploitation. Captain Morrison led his team through the station carefully. They found evidence of Elena's activities everywhere. Laboratories filled with specimen jars, rooms converted into elaborate trap systems, and areas that looked like testing grounds for hunting experiments. "Elena?" Morrison called out over the communication system. "Elena, can you hear me? We're here to get you out." Elena's voice came back immediately, calm and friendly. "Hello, Jake. I'm in the deep laboratory on level 7. Come on down." "I have. So much to show you?" Morrison felt a chill at how normal she sounded. After 3 weeks alone with monsters, she should have been terrified, traumatized, maybe even dead. Instead, she sounded like she was inviting him to see her latest research project. The team made their way to level 7. The deeper they went, the worse things became. The walls were covered with black stains that could only be blood. Strange smells filled the air, mixtures of chemicals and decay that made them want to vomit. They found Elena in the main laboratory, standing over a series of glass containers filled with developing creatures. She looked perfectly calm and healthy, though her clothes were stained with substances they didn't want to identify. "Elena, thank God you're alive," Morrison said. "We need to get you out of here right now." Elena smiled at him. "Why would I want to leave? This is the most important research of my career. Look at what I've discovered." She gestured to the containers around her. Inside each one was a creature that looked like a nightmare version of human evolution. Some had multiple arms, with razor-sharp claws. Others had heads that could turn completely around. All of them were clearly designed for killing. "These are the next generation," Elena explained proudly. "I've been working with the stations at A to perfect the genetic combinations. Each one is better than the last." One of Morrison's crew members stepped forward. "Dr. Martinez, these things are monsters. You can't seriously be thinking of continuing this research." Elena's smile faded. "Monsters?" she repeated. "No, you don't understand. These creatures are perfect. They're what evolution looks like when it has a clear purpose." She walked over to one of the containers and placed her hand on the glass. The creature inside responded, moving toward her touch like it recognized her. "I've raised this one from an embryo," Elena said softly. "I've taught it how to hunt, how to think, how to adapt. It's like my child, in a way." Morrison exchanged worried looks with his crew. Elena wasn't just studying the creatures anymore. She had formed some kind of emotional connection with them. "Elena, we've read your research notes," Morrison said. "Carefully. You've been torturing these things, keeping them alive while you experiment on them. That's not scientific research. That's cruelty." Elena turned to face him, and Morrison saw something in her eyes that made him step back. There was intelligence there, but it was cold and predatory, like looking into the eyes of a hunting animal. "Cruelty?" Elena laughed. "Jake, you don't understand what I've accomplished here. I've learned things about alien biology that will change everything. I know how they think, how they breed, how they can be defeated." She pulled out a datapad covered with her notes. "I've documented the weaknesses of 47 different creature types. I know exactly how to kill each one in the most efficient way possible. Do you have any idea how valuable this information is?" Morrison looked around the laboratory. In the corner, he saw something that made his stomach turn. Elena had built a throne-like chair out of creature bones and covered it with preserved alien skin. This was where she sat while she worked on her experiments. "Elena, you need help. What you've been through here, being trapped with these things, it's changed you. But we can fix this. We can get you the treatment you need." Elena's expression became confused, like she didn't understand what he was talking about. "Changed me? Jake, this experience hasn't changed me. It's revealed what I was always meant to be." She walked over to a control panel and pressed several buttons. The glass containers began to open, releasing the creatures inside. "Let me show you what I've learned," Elena said, as the monsters emerged from their containers. But instead of attacking the humans, the creatures moved to Elena's side. They surrounded her protectively, looking at Morrison and his crew like they were the intruders. Elena reached out and stroked one of the creatures like it was a pet. The monster, which should have been trying to kill anything human, leaned into her touch and made a sound like purring. "They trust me," Elena explained. "They know I understand them. I've proven that I'm a better predator than they are, so they accept me as their leader." Morrison realized that Elena wasn't a victim who had survived the creatures. She had become something worse than any of the monsters in the station. She had become their queen. "The original research team made a mistake," Elena continued. "They tried to control the creatures through fear and pain. But that only works for so long. The real way to control perfect predators is to become a perfect predator yourself." One of Morrison's crew members raised his weapon, but Elena held up her hand. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said calmly. "My children don't like it when people threaten me." The creatures around her tensed, ready to attack. Morrison could see that they would all be dead in seconds if Elena gave the command. "What do you want, Elena?" Morrison asked. Elena smiled, and for a moment she looked like the scientist he had known before. "I want to continue my research. There are so many more species to study, so many more experiments to conduct. This station is perfect for my work." She walked over to a computer terminal and called up a star map. "I've been monitoring the communications networks. There are reports of similar creatures on at least 12 other worlds. I want to visit them all." Morrison understood what she was really saying. Elena didn't just want to study the creatures. She wanted to collect them, to build an army of perfect predators with herself as their leader. "I can't let you do that," Morrison said. Elena looked at him sadly. "Oh, Jake, you still don't understand. Do you? You're not in a position to let me do anything." The creatures moved closer to Morrison's team. In the dim light of the laboratory, surrounded by monsters that obeyed a human who was no longer human, Morrison realized the horrible truth. They hadn't come to rescue Elena from the monsters. They had walked into the lair of something far worse than any alien creature. They had found the apex predator of the galaxy, and it looked exactly like them. Elena Martinez had proven that the most dangerous monster in the universe was a human being who had stopped pretending to be civilized. Now she was ready to show the rest of the galaxy what that meant.